Okay, so I've gotten some requests about how I do my project from the beginning to the end, so I decided to put together my end-to-end workflow in this video. So that includes analyzing the site and utilizing sketches to brainstorm concepts for the building, what thought processes I go through to come up with those ideas, and actually implementing them in 3D. I will show you some really cool techniques to get some realistic furnitures and models into your project, and finally turn them into a hyper-realistic production and presentation ready renderings. This might be a slightly longer video, but I will be revealing all the tips and tricks I've learned over the years. Hope you're excited for this. Let's dive right into it. One of the things that makes architectural design so interesting is that every project comes with its own unique site. And each site comes with its own unique constraints as well as benefits. Unlike the types of materials and labor you can source anywhere within the vicinity, location is one parameter that cannot be acquired otherwise. So I will start my project by carefully examining the physical and regulatory contexts that surround our project site. One of the core design parameters I will extract from this exercise will be the presence of lush forest located across the west and north edges of our site. All the spatial planning will consider this as a primary focal point. And aside from that, I'm looking up my local city's zoning map to make sure that my building falls into the regulation. There's one thing I want to demystify before we get started. Sometimes when you look at someone's design, they look effortless. The way they treat the project brief, shape the form and geometry seem almost obvious. But the truth is that even these people, they go through hundreds and hundreds of iterations before they arrive at this final design. This is one thing I learned while I was working at Big and OMA's office. They really pump out iterations and options for every single project. And their archive is just full of hundreds and if not thousands of failed ideas that never made it out of the studio. So don't be too hard on yourself if you feel like your initial concept isn't strong or you have trouble coming up with how to come up with ideas. It's totally fine, and even the most seasoned veterans go through the same issues. And ultimately, it's my personal belief that this iterative process is what ultimately creates a good design. And as cliche as it is, sometimes you kind of have to put your project upside down to discover new angles and discover new possibilities. That doesn't mean you have to completely restart every single time. I think it's more about finding out the best way to deal with each individual question and bring the best of all the worlds that you discover through this process. So in this particular project, I will be demonstrating how I sketched through around 3 ideas that are vastly different from each other. And you'll see how they all come together. So coming back to this hand sketch, I find that hand sketching is really useful for every step of the design process because there's something very intuitive about it. It's the fastest means to transfer ideas from my head into some physical space that I can use to communicate with other people. Now, the first concept that I'm exploring here really maximizes the view that the site provides. So as mentioned before, there's a really nice forest to the west and north of the site. So I conceived a building form that is almost like a quarter moon that provides view in every angle possible. But ultimately, I realized that there will be almost zero lawn space and outdoor space that the owner can enjoy. So I ended up abandoning that one. Moving on to the second site. So I reduced the building footprint significantly in this one. We still maintain that orientation towards the greenery that is nearby. And this actually allows us to access the green as well as have some kind of private lawn area. So I thought that was pretty good. And this is a point where I realized I might want to place a infinity pool on top of the building. And in order to do so, we had to create some kind of access. So this is a part where I'm sketching out the perspective of what it would be like to create a long staircase that takes you from the ground level to the roof where the pool will be located. Now the issue with this, I realized, is that the staircase looks way too inviting, and realistically we probably don't want, just passersby to, go up the staircase and enjoy the pool. So that's where I moved on to the third concept. As you can see, in this conceptual development phase, I'm really eyeballing the dimensions of the site. If you want to be a bit more formal, what you could do is you could print out the plan of your site and use that as the basis for your sketch. Now for this concept, I really wanted to put more emphasis on the pool. So that's where I added the pool that is looking perpendicularly into the forest, and added the main core building at an off axis from that pool. And instead of having the staircase exposed to the street side, the staircase will be facing inside, where it'll be slightly hidden away from the public access. I quite enjoyed this idea, so I ended up developing this further, and I thought it actually creates pretty compelling views on the ground level. So ultimately, this was the option that I decided to proceed with. Okay, now that we have done some research and figured out our basic outline, I want to transfer everything into Rhino and start developing the ideas from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in the images that we have created. I'll bring in the scanned images as pictures so that I can move them around and adjust them as needed. Okay, so here are the 4 concepts that we have sketched out earlier, and I'm going to take a screenshot of the aerial view from Google Map, and make sure to include the little scale bar over here, bottom right corner, so that we can use that to approximate the size of our site. Okay, so I've taken a screenshot and brought that into Rhino. Now I'm going to use this to scale out the drawing. Of course, if you have a properly CAD'd model and site plan, you don't have to do this. And I'm just gonna scale them up so that I can actually see them. Yeah, there we go. Cool. I'm gonna quickly fast forward this part where I'm gonna trace the satellite map, and so that we have something to work with. Now that I have a really rough outline, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the picture. I could actually just keep it there, but I'll just lower the opacity so that it doesn't get in the way. Increase the object transparency to 90%. Okay, that's good. And I'll put this in a separate layer, which will be locked so that we don't accidentally mess around with it. Cool. Alright, so I have indicated the rough site boundary as well as a tree that is a pretty prominent object on site. Should probably map that one out as well. Alright, let's transfer some of these ideas onto our actual site. Let me see how well this matches up. I'll see if my eyeballing skills are decent. Yeah, that's actually not too bad. Tree needs to go around here. Alright, not the worst thing in the world. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and lower the opacity of this picture as well. And try to sketch with that one. Okay, so I'm gonna lock this picture object and start sketching. I'll create a new layer just for our building. And I'll rename the old one as site. At this point, I will be pulling in some of the information that I found on the city's zoning regulations, and I'll be adding some of the setbacks. So the building had to be at least 3 meters away from the site boundary. So I'll do that. So that kind of hugs our building pretty well. And this area will just be like a uninhabited space, so I'll just leave it the way it is. And our building will roughly take on the shape of a rectangle, so I will use the rectangle tool to draw the footprint. Nice. And I'll draw another one that goes diagonally towards the main view that we are hoping to capture. And for this, I will use a 3-point option. Now, as you can see, our pool is like sticking out of the site or our setback a little bit. So I will kind of like use this as like a bit of a creative freedom I'm applying to this theoretical project. In a lot of like real life projects, it is possible to get exceptions for small rules like this if you have really good reasons to do so. So that's like what the whole like permitting process will involve. And some things are more viable than the others. I'm really not sure about this one, but just for the fun's sake, we will keep it the way it is and hope for the best. I'll repeat the rectangle process one more time to kind of delineate the staircase. So it's supposed to run perpendicular to the pool, so I will face it like that. Awesome. Now I'm gonna change the layer colors a little bit so that things are a little bit easier to distinguish. I don't know what the best practice for this is. I feel like it changes every once in a while, but I'm gonna unlock the picture object. And for now, I will move it over to the reference layer so that we don't have to see it anymore. Boom. All right. For site, I'll just use dark green. And we'll keep the building the way it is. Awesome. Maybe we can try modeling this in 3D now. I'm using the shortcut zoom extent so that our view captures all the objects that are in the scene. And I don't think we need these anymore either. So I'm gonna go ahead and move them over to reference. So instead of deleting, putting the advantage of putting them into reference layer is that we can always bring them back later. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and extrude our building footprint just to get a good sense of what our volume looks like. I'll set the height to about 4 meters. And I'll cap it. There we go. And I'll do something similar here as well. Extrude. And I'll make sure this one is solid so I don't have to cap it again. For the pool, I want to make it, let's say, like 1.1 meters tall so that it matches the height of a railing that we're going to be adding. Okay, I'll use move, and I'll also add the vertical constraint so that it only moves vertically from our C-plane. Here we go. And let's nest some additional layers underneath here. So I'll add a sub layer here, which is going to be, a pool. I'll transfer this over there and set the color to aquamarine, which sounds fitting since, you know, pool holds water. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and extrude this, and I'll Boolean difference it to get a sense of like what the object volumes will look like. Now that is our basic volume. So we can kind of save this as a diagrammatic model for future, you know, illustration and visualization purposes. All right, so I have put all the 3D models into separate layers so that I can either turn them on or off like this and work on the 2D space again. Now that we have a basic volume, I want to do some planning. Spatial planning. So since our staircase will be sort of like bisecting the entire building volume, I think what we need to do is divide the space based on that. And one cool thing I want to do is I want to add like a little, you know, skylight pool skylight that has the water reflection going through it. And I think it'll be a really cool feature in the living room. So I will reserve this space as living room. So let's add another sub layer to do some annotating. All right, annotation layer, and I'll use that here. For that, and for space planning, I'll just use rectangles and text. Living room. Okay, and if the living room is here, I think what might be fitting here is, let's see. I guess like it'll make sense to put the bedrooms in a slightly distant area from the actual living space. So I think this area will be reserved for places of programs of repose and rest. So that'll include things like bedroom, master bedroom, and like bathrooms. Now there's this middle section, which will be interesting. I think this can be a really good area for, let's see, a lot of utilities, such as like the shared bathrooms. And maybe like a hobby space that's gonna be used as... Yeah, so this shared bathroom needs to be close to the living room so that it can be used by guests. And maybe around here, it's gonna be the entrance foyer and other public functions. All right. And last but not least, I will place the kitchen on the far right corner over here. Or far left corner over here. This kitchen / dining space will be really nice because it gets almost like, 180-degree view around the, the luscious green site context. So this will be pretty nice. So kitchen and dining. Okay, awesome. And of course there will be some outdoor spaces like patio out here. And we'll have to figure out what the landscaping looks like as well, but we'll get to that in a bit. All right. Now based on these outlines, we can go into slightly more concrete spatial planning. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna offset, start creating some more walls. So in here, I'll create a layer for wall. And there's a lot of dimensions you have to sort of keep in mind when you draw a floor plan, so I might have to look them up. I'm a little bit rusty on this front, but let's see how far we can go. And having some kind of scaled figure really helps as well. So let's see if I can find some good CAD blocks to use for this purpose. Okay, and you know what's really awesome is that we actually have a furniture pack that we have in our store. So if you're interested in using these, you're more than welcome. I will add the links in the description. So even though these are 3D models, I can easily place them in our 2D space and get a really good sense of what our space looks like. So for example, I'm gonna grab these living room furniture and then bring them over here. And I feel like that really fits well within our space and still gives us a lot of like space on the sides for circulation and just having this really airy feel towards throughout the building. Okay, and then I'll grab some elements for the kitchen. Now what's really cool about the kitchen module that we have is that it's really modular. So you can like, break them apart and place them however you want. So for example, if you have, if you want to move the stove to another place and put the fridge over here, you can easily do that by moving them around like this. And these are all based on standard sizes, so you can get a really good sense of what the space will look like if it actually gets built. Yeah, things probably got messed up because I didn't have the project toggle on. So I'm just gonna go ahead and undo some of these changes. Oh yeah, that's really messed up. Okay, I'm actually gonna get rid of the cabinets for now because I just want to see everything in plan. Let's see if there's anything else we should bring around. So I'm gonna grab some tables and chairs. Let's bring in some bedroom stuff. And of course, we need some bathroom fixtures. Now I admit, and creating a nice plan sometimes takes a lot of iterations. So it's not something that I can confidently say I can figure out in like next 10 minutes. I find that like sometimes it takes multiple days to like look at it again, and sometimes you will see something that you didn't see before. So my plans might look a little sketch, but yeah, I hope you're okay with that. Okay, cool. I'll subdivide the right side over here, and I'll reserve it for parking. Maybe perhaps we can put some patio furniture out there. And let's create another bathroom for the master bedroom. I'd say something like that. So that gives us a good outline of what where the bathroom will be. And of course, yeah, parking doesn't need the full depth to park the cars. So I think this would be a good amount of space. And in front over here, I will create some kind of corridor situation so that once you've parked your cars, you're able to enter the building without having to go outside again. All right. Entrance foyer. What should we have there? All right, so I'm gonna orient the bed so that we are facing outside. I think that would be super nice if we could do that. And of course, something that I want to put a lot of emphasis on is storage when it comes to residential buildings. They surprisingly take up a lot of space, so it's always good to reserve a lot of space for that. And I kind of like to make them hidden as much as possible, so I would say, let's say, we'll do that, and let's give it a 2 feet depth for the closet. Roughly something like that. And for master bedroom, it might be nice to have a walk-in kind as well, so I might actually get rid of that and break the space up further to create a walk-in closet. All right, let me try to grab some standard dimensions for parking stall. Okay, so got some info here. Apparently it is usually 9 feet around and 17 feet deep. Apparently, sounds really generous to me. Let me take another look. Okay, on this website called dimensions.com, I'm able to find some reference dimensions, so I'll put this in. So we want to reserve at least around, let's say, 8 feet wide and 16 feet deep. Might need a little bit more space in case, like, the owners have bigger cars. So that might be a good idea. All right, so let's say we leave this much space for parking. So I don't think we have enough space for walk-in closet here. So we might have to move him around here. That might be the best. I could always give more space in the garage as well. So not only can they just fit one single car, but also have some space for storage and everything. So we might actually do that. So let's say we place walk-in closet over here, and we will reserve this amount of space for storage, which is going to be accessible from parking. Now we could probably tighten up the space a little bit and create another bedroom over here. So I will see if I can cut out some space for that. Yeah, it's a bit tight, but it's definitely viable. We can place the door here, and we could even have a little desk, something like that. Now, and we can probably add some storage under the staircase as well. We probably won't, yeah, let's try something like that for now. Cool. And for the bathroom, maybe we can orient it this way so that we'll be able to get floor to ceiling window towards the porch. I'm gonna scale up the kitchen just a little bit. And we're gonna add some more cabinet modules for the kitchen as well. I find that having more counter space is always nice. And we could maybe potentially wrap things around a little bit, so that we create a nice island setup, or like a little bar kind of situation. Usually bar has a little bit deeper depth as well, so you can extend this by almost 1 foot. So I will do, let's say we do that. Then I feel like there's not enough space to place like a full-fledged out dining room over there, so might have to squeeze this in over here, which actually kind of works out better in terms of this middle section over here, because I feel like there was way too much space on either side. So now that we have extra depth, we can place some bar stools. So that gives us a rough outline of the interior space. I'm gonna be fast forwarding the part where I'm just making things a little bit more specific, but you'll also notice that I'm actively moving things around and then changing the configuration. I find that the plan design is also something that requires many iterations. So I would go back and forth between printed version of the plan, which I will red mark and bring it back into digital, and then do that like dozens and dozens of times to arrive at a final plan. But for the demonstration purpose, I will be skipping a lot of that and try to arrive at a decent floor plan as quickly as possible. Now let's take a look at how this whole thing looks in 3D. So we haven't extruded the walls, so like we can kind of see through everything, but you can kind of start to get a sense of what the living room space will look like. I think this looks pretty nice. I think what might be interesting is if we start adding some kind of like level change. Now, I don't know how practical that is, but let's see. For example, let's say we draw a line here and elevate everything on the left side over here. And we'll be adding some steps over here. It might be a little bit dangerous for someone who's sitting here, but let's go with that. Maybe 1 foot's too much. I'll shrink that a little bit. Maybe we'll just do like 10 inches. Awesome. All right, let's try modeling that out. So let's say each step rises by, let's say like 12 centimeters. So the idea here is that we are separating the space through elevation instead of creating walls or any kind of partition. I feel like that makes the space a lot more fun. We should probably add some kind of railing over here, possibly, but now next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start modeling the walls. Okay, I'm intentionally leaving this side of the building open so that it's easier for me to look into it. But in production setting, you will probably cover that up. Now, next thing I need to do is I need to punch a hole through the roof. So I will use Boolean difference to take that volume out. There we go. Man, look at that. think there's a lot of potential here. Yeah, it's starting to look pretty interesting. Now that we've got the sunroof going on. And now let's add the actual pool. You can kind of get an idea of the reason why we made the pool 1.1 meters tall. This is so that it lines up perfectly with the railings, as you can see. Alright, we'll move on to Boolean differencing out the stairwell now. So yeah, let's try around this much for now. We'll probably have to do some math here to figure out exactly how many steps we need. Yeah, to do that, we can create some boxes. Get into wireframe so we can see through the whole thing. Alright, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I feel like there must be a better way to do this, but I find that I end up doing this every time. If anyone has some advice on how this can be done in a better way, let me know in the comments. By the looks of it, we have quite a long staircase. I guess that's inevitable considering how tall our floor to ceiling is. And so a couple things we need to do here is that we need to add some resting, like, I forget what it's called, but yeah, you have to put some breaks in the stairs. So we're gonna have to do that. Some kind of landing, yes, that's the word for it. All right. Let's try to grab all the staircase elements here. Pretty good. Let me isolate it. Now the way I'm isolating everything is by selecting all the things I want to keep and then inverting it and then locking them. So that way we're able to still see where everything's are and we're able to like snap to them if we wanted to. Okay, so I forget what the code minimum for how much landing we need to add for how much run, but I will just sort of guesstimate that and try to make it as generous as possible. So maybe like 1 over there. Boom, there we go. Okay, we have quite the staircase over here. Yeah, that is quite the run. Now, one thing we could do is we could like build up the land so that we can save a little bit on the number of staircase we need to build up. So let's say, for example, like the soil comes up to here, then we wouldn't need this many staircase. But for now, let's keep it at that. I think it's not the worst thing in the world. And we have a bit of a peek into who's going up the staircase. So there's an interesting connection through the house, which I really like. All right, let's unlock everything and see how things are looking. Awesome. This is looking pretty cool, honestly. And of course, for a real project, I would have to like really flesh out every aspect of this project. But since, let's say this is like a conceptual project that I'm just using for competition, for example, I don't have to actually build out every single part of it. So this is one time-saving hack you can use for your future projects. So that concludes the conceptual design phase. In the next video, I will be finishing up the interior using real-life furniture. I'll walk you through how you can turn any product into a fully textured 3D model. And then finally, I'll also show you how to turn your 3D scene into a hyper-realistic rendering with a subtle animation as well. Thanks for sticking through this long video. I'll see you guys in the next one.